join a company like this, you are drinking from a fire hose for the first couple of months. New staff that were joining, they were getting integrated with these new teams. I implemented a buddy system so that every new engineer that came in would have somebody that they could work alongside for the first 6 months, ensure that they had somebody to contact for the whole time that they were getting used to the company. And I frequently say that as you join a company like this, you are drinking from a fire hose for the first couple of months. There's a lot of information that comes your way. And so having a buddy there helped out. I added software engineering managers to the team to ensure that there were people who specifically looked after the team, continued to ensure there was a growth mindset, to continue to implement the plans that I had to make these teams more stable. Hi everyone, this is Colwith back with another episode of groCTO podcast. And today with us, we have a very special guest. He has 12 plus years of engineering and leadership experience. He has been an ex-software development manager for Amazon and currently working as director of engineering for Imagine Learning. Welcome to the show, David. Great to have you here. Thanks very much. Thanks for the introduction. All right. So there is a ritual. Whosoever comes to our podcast, before we get down to the main section. So for the audience, the main section, today's topic of discussion is how to integrate the acquired team successfully, which has been a burning topic in the last 4 years because there have been a lot of acquisitions, there have been a lot of mergers. But before we move there, David, we would love to know something about you, your hobbies, something from your childhood, from your teenage, or your from personal life, which LinkedIn doesn't tell, and you would like to share with us. Sure. So in terms of my, I suppose, personal life and the things that I've enjoyed the most, I always used to love video games as a child. And so one of the things that I am very proud of is that I went to go and live in Japan for university. And that was a genuinely life-changing experience. And I absolutely loved my climate there. And I think it's had a bit of an effect on my time since then. But with that, I'm very much a fan of Formula One and rugby, and so I've been very happy in the post COVID-19 years of spending a lot of time over in Silverstone and Murrayfield to go and see some of those things. So that's still something that most people don't know about me, but I actually quite like my sports of all things. So yeah. Great. Thanks for that little cute intro. And with that, I think let's get going with the main section. So integrating your acquired team successfully has been a challenge with a lot of engineering leaders, engineering managers with whom I have talked. And you come with an immense experience, like you have had been engineering manager for OVO and then for Amazon. You have been leading teams at large organizations and then moving into Imagine Learning. So before we touch on the topic of how you absorb such teams successfully, I would love to know, how does this transition look like? Like Amazon is a giant, right? And then you're moving to Imagine Learning. Of course, that is also a very big company, but there is definitely a shift there. So what made you move? How is this transition? Maybe some goods or bads if you can share without getting your job impacted. Sure, yeah, no problem. So once upon a time, you're correct in terms of that I've got, over 12 years experience in the industry. But before that, I was a teacher. So for me, education is extremely important. And I still think it's one of the most rewarding things that as a human you can be a part of, helping to bring the next generation up in terms of their education, give them better capabilities and potential for the future. And so when somebody approached me with the position here at Imagine Learning, I had to jump at the chance. It sounded extremely exciting, and I was correct. It was extremely exciting. There's definitely been a lot of movement, and I'm sure we'll touch on that in a little while. But there is definitely a quite a major cultural shift, and then obviously there is the fact that Amazon, being a US centric company with a UK arm, which I was a part of,
Imagine Learning is very similar. It's a US-centric company with a US-centric educational stance. And then me being part of the UK arm of the company means that there are some cultural challenges that Amazon has already worked through that Imagine Learning still needed to work through. And so part of that challenge is, sort of educating up the chain, if you like, on the cultural differences between the two. So definitely some big changes. It's less easy to sort of move sideways as you can in companies like Amazon, where you can transition from one team to another. Here it's a little bit more put together. There's only one or two teams here that you could potentially work for, but that's not to say that the opportunities aren't there. And again, we'll touch on that in a little bit, I'm sure.
Perfect. All right. So one question I think all the audience would love to know, like in a company like Amazon, what is it like to get there? Because it takes almost 8 to 10 years if you're really good at something in Amazon, spend that time, and then you move into that profile of a software development manager, right? So how was that experience for you, and what do you think it requires in an engineering manager at Amazon to be there?
That's a difficult question to answer because it changes upon the person. I jumped straight in as a software development manager. And in terms of what they're looking for, anybody that has looked into the company will be aware of their leadership principles, and being able to display their leadership principles through previous experiences, that's the thing that will get you in. So if you naturally have that capability to always put the customer first, to ensure that you are data driven, to ensure that you have, they call it a bias for action, but that you move quickly is kind of what it comes down to. And that you earn trust in a meaningful way. Those are some of the things that I think most managers would be looking for. And when interviewing, of course, there is a technical aspect to this. You need to be able to talk the talk. And I think if you are not able to be able to reel off the information in an intrinsic manner, as in you've internalized how the technology works, that will get picked up. Of course it will. You can't prepare for it like you can an exam. There is an element of this that requires experience. That being said, there are definitely some areas that people can prepare for, and those are primarily in the area of ensuring that you get the experiences that meet the leadership principles that will push you into that position. In order to succeed, it requires a lot of real work. I'm not going to pretend that it's easy to work at a company like Amazon. They are well known for ensuring that the staff that they have are the best and that they're working with the best. And you have to, as a manager, ensure that the team that you're building up can fulfill what you require them to do. If you're not able to do that, if you're taking people on because they seem like they might be a good fit for now, you will, in the medium to long term, find that that is detrimental to you as a manager, as well as your team and its capabilities. And you need to be able to then resolve that potential problem by making some difficult decisions and having some difficult conversations with individuals. Because at the end of the day, you as a manager are measured on what your team output, not what you as an individual output. And that's a real shift in thinking from being even a technical lead to being an engineering manager.
That's for sure there. One thing that you feel stands out in you that have put you in this position where you are an SDM at Amazon, and then you transitioned to a leadership position now, which is director of engineering at Imagine Learning. So, what is that one or two traits of yourself that you might have reflected upon that have made you move here, grow in the career?
I think you have to be very flexible in your thinking. You have to have a manner of thinking that enables for a much wider scope. and you have to be able to let go of an individual product. If your thinking is really focused on one team and one product, and it stays in that single first party of what you're concentrating on that moment in time, then it really limits your ability to look a little bit further beyond the scope and start to move into that strategic thinking. That's where you start moving from a software development manager into a more senior position, is with that strategic thinking mindset where you're thinking beyond the 3 months and beyond the single product. And you're starting to move into the half yearly, full yearly thinking as a minimum. And you start thinking about how you can bring your team along for a strategic vision as opposed to a tactical goal.
Got it. Perfect. All right. So with that, moving to Imagine Learning and your experience here in the last 1.5 years, a little more than that actually, uh, you have gone through the phase of your self learning and then getting teams onboarded that were from the acquired products and companies. And that experience, when you started sharing with me on our last call, I found that very interesting. So I think we can start off with that point here, like how this journey of uh, rearranging teams, bringing different teams together, started happening for you. What were the challenges? What was your roadmap in your head and your team? How will you align them? How will you make the right impact in the fastest time frame possible? So how things shaped up around that?
Sure. Initially, the biggest challenge I had was that there was a very significant knowledge drain before I had started. So in the year before I came on board, and it was in the first year post acquisition, the attrition rate for the digital part of the company was somewhere in the region of 50%. So people were leaving at a very fast pace. I had to find a way to plug that and quickly, because we couldn't continue to have such a large knowledge drain. Now, the way that I did that was I believe in the engineers that I have in front of me. They wouldn't be in the position that they're in if they didn't have a significant amount of capability. But I also wanted to ensure that they had and acquired a growth mindset. And that was something that I think up until that point, they were more interested in just getting work done, as opposed to wanting to grow into a sort of more senior position, or a position with more responsibility and a bigger challenge. And so I ensured that I mixed the teams together. We had, front enders and back enders in separate teams initially. And so I joined them together to make sure that they held responsibility for a piece of work from beginning to end, which gave them autonomy on the work that they were doing. I ensured that I earned trust with that team as well. And most importantly, I put in a no blame culture. Because my expectation is that everybody is always acting with the best of intentions, and that usually when something is going wrong, there is a mechanism that is missing that would have resolved the issue.
But sorry to interrupt you here. Do you think the reason for attrition were aligned with these factors in the team, where people didn't have autonomy, there were blame game happening? Were these the reasons, or the reasons were different? I mean, if you're comfortable sharing, cool. But otherwise, like, we can just move on.
No, yeah, I think that in reality there was an element of that. There was a somewhat not toxic necessarily culture, but definitely a culture of moving fast just to get things done, as opposed to trying to work in the correct manner.
Makes
And
sense.
that means that people then did feel blamed. They felt pressured. They felt that they had no autonomy. Every decision was made for them. And so with more senior staff, especially, looking at an M&A situation where that didn't change, they didn't see a future in their career there, because they didn't know where they could possibly move forward into, because they had no decision making or autonomy capability themselves.
Makes sense. Got it. Yeah, please go on. Yeah.
Sorry, yes. So with putting these things in place, giving everybody a growth mindset mentality, and ensuring that there was a no blame culture. There were some changes in personnel as well. I identified a couple of individuals that were detrimental to the team, and those sort of things are quite difficult. Moving people on who they're trying their best, and I don't deny that they are, but their way of working is detrimental to a team. But with those changes, we then moved from a 50% regretted attrition to a 5% regretted attrition over the course of 23 and 24, which is a very, very significant change in attrition. And we also, at that point in time, were able to start implementing new methodologies of bringing in talent from below. So we started partnering with Glasgow University to bring in an internship program. We also took on some of their graduates to ensure that we had, for want of a better phrase, new blood in the team, to ensure that we're bringing new ideas in. And then we put both the people through the training programs that they should need.
I'm curious about one thing. Saying that stopping this culture of the blame game is definitely uh, good to hear. But what exactly did you do in practice on a daily level or on a weekly level or on every sprint level that impacted and changed this mindset? What were the things that you inculcated in the culture?
So initially, and some people think that this might be a trite point, but I actually put out the policy in front of people. I wrote it down and put it in front of people and gave them a document review session to say, this is a no blame culture and this is what I mean by that, so that people understood what my meaning was from that. Following that, I then did have a conversation with some other parts of, some people in other parts of the company to say, please reroute your conversations through me. Don't go directly to engineers. I want to be that point of contact going forward, so that I can ensure that communication is felt in the right manner and the right capacity. And then the other thing is that we started bringing in things like postmortems or incident response management sessions that where I was very forceful on ensuring that no names were put into these documents, because until that point, people did put other people's names in, and wanted to make sure that it was noted that it was so and so's fault. And I had to step on that very, very strongly. I was like, this could have been anyone's fault. It's just that they happened to be at that line of code at that point in time, and made that decision, which they did with a good intention. So I had to really step in with the team, and every single post-mortem, every major decision in that area, every sprint where we went through what the team had completed in terms of work, and made sure we did pick out individuals in terms of particularly good work that they did, but then stepped very strongly on any hints of trying to blame someone for a problem that had happened, and made it very clear to them again that this could have happened to anyone, and we need to work together to ensure it can't happen to anyone ever again.
Makes sense. So when this impact started happening, did you see people from the previous developers, like who were already the part of Imagine Learning, those were getting retained, or the ones who joined after acquisition from the other company, those developers were also getting retained? How did it impact the two groups, and how did they like gel up later on?
Both, actually, yeah. So the staff who were already here, effectively the drains stopped, and there weren't people leaving anymore that had some level of tenure longer than 6 months at all from that point forward. And new staff that were joining, they were getting integrated with these new teams. I implemented a buddy system so that every new engineer that came in would have somebody that they could work alongside for the first 6 months, ensure that they had somebody to contact for the whole time that they were getting used to the company. And I frequently say that as you join a company like this, you are drinking from a fire hose for the first couple of months. There's a lot of information that comes your way. And so having a buddy there helped out. I added software engineering managers to the team to ensure that there were people who specifically looked after the team, continued to ensure there was a growth mindset, to continue to implement the plans that I had, to make these teams more stable. And that took a while to find the right people. I will say that. There was also a challenge with integrating the teams from our vendors in international countries. So we worked with some teams in India and some teams in the Ukraine. And with integrating people from those teams, there was some level of separation. And I think one of the major things we started doing then was getting the people to meet in a more personal manner, bringing them across to our team to actually meet each other face to face, and realize that these are very talented individuals, just like we are. They're no different just because they live a 5.5 hour time zone away, and doesn't mean that they're any less capable. They just have a different way of working, and we can absolutely work with these very talented people. And bringing them into the teams via a buddy, ensuring that they have someone to work with, making sure that the no blame culture continued even into our contractors. It took a while, don't get me wrong, and there were definitely some missteps. But it was vital to ensuring that there was team cohesion all the way across.
Definitely. And I've also experienced this while talking to other engineering leaders, that when teams come in, usually it is hard to find space for them to do that impactful work, right? So you need to give those people that space in general in the team, which you did, but also at the same time, the kind of work they are picking up, that also becomes a challenge sometimes. So was that a case in your scenario as well? And did you like find a way out there?
It was the case here. There definitely was a case of the work was predefined, if you like, to some extent by the most senior personnel. And so one of the things that we ensured that we did, I worked very closely with our product team to ensure that this happened, is that we brought the engineers in a lot sooner. We ensured that this wasn't just the most senior member of the team, but instead that we worked with different personnel, and de-siloing that information from one person to another was extremely important because there were silos of information within our teams. And I made it very clear that if there's an incident and somebody needs some help and there's only one person on the team that is capable of actually working, then we're going to find ourselves in a real problem very soon. And I think people understood that intrinsically because of the knowledge loss that had happened before I started, or just as I was coming on board. Because they knew that there were people who knew this part of the code base or this database or how this part of infrastructure worked, and suddenly we didn't have anybody that had that knowledge, so we now needed to reacquire it. And so I ensured that this comes from an Amazon background, so anybody that has worked at this company will know what I'm talking about here. But documentation is key. Ensuring document reviews was extremely important. Those are the kind of things, ensuring that we could pass on information from one person to another, from one team to another, in the most scalable fashion. It does slow you down in delivery, but it speeds you up in the longer term because it enables more people to do a wider range of work without needing to rely on that one person that knows everything.
Sure, definitely. I think documentation has been like always on the top of the priority list itself now. So where I'm talking to, because once there are downturns and you face such problems, you realize the importance of it. In the early phase, you are just running, building, not focusing on that piece, but later on it becomes a matter of priority for sure. And I can totally relate to it. So talking about these people who have joined in and you're trying to integrate, uh, they definitely need some level of cultural alignment also. Like they're coming from a different background, coming into a new company. Along with that, there might be requirements. You mentioned like skill development, right? So were there any skill development plans that worked out here that you implemented? Anything from that end you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So with joining together our teams of front end and back end developers, um, that's obviously going to cause some issues. So some developers are not going to be quite as excited about working in a different area. Um, but I think with knowing that the siloing of information was there and that we had to resolve that as an issue, and then ensuring that people who are being brought on via vendors from international countries and things like that. What we started to do was to ensure that we put in pairing sessions with all of our developers. Up until that point, they kind of worked on their own, and so I find that working one to one with another individual tends to be the fastest way to learn how that things works. In the same way as a child learns their language from their parents far faster than they ever would from watching TV. Although sometimes I do wonder about that myself, with my daughter thinking Baby Shark to me 16 times, and I don't think I've ever seen that. So we'll see where that goes. Um, but having that one to one relationship with the person means that we're able to ask questions, we're able to gain that knowledge very quickly. Having the documentation backing that up means that you've got a frame of reference to keep going to as well. And then if you keep doing that quite frequently and add in some of the more abstract knowledge sharing sessions, so I'm thinking like lunch and learn type sessions or lightning talks, as well as having a base of it's sort of a knowledge base that people can learn from. So obvious examples of things like Pluralsight or O'Reilly's library. Um, but we also have our own internal documentation as well, where we give people tutorials, we walk people through things. We added in a code review session. We added in a code of the sprint session as well for our sprint reviews that went out to the whole team and to the rest of the company, where we showed that we're optimizing where we can. And all these things, they didn't just enable the team to become full stack. And I will say all of our developers now are full stack. I'd be very surprised if there are any developers I'm working with that are not able to make a switch. But it also built trust with the rest of the company as well. And that's the thing with being a company that has been acquired, is that we need to um, very quickly and very deliberately shout about how well we're doing as a company so that they can look at what we're doing and use us, as has frequently been the case recently, actually as a best practice. A company that's doing things well and doing things meaningfully and has that growth mindset. And we start then to have conversations with the wider company, which enables things like a tiger team type session. It enables us to widen our scope and have more say in the company. It's kind of a spiral at that point in time, because you
Definitely.
start to increase your scope. And with doing that, it means that your team can grow because that they know the thing that they can trust us to do things effectively. And it also gives, going back to what I said at the beginning, people more autonomy, more decision making capabilities, and to get further out into a company.
And in such situations, the opinions that they're bringing in are more customer centric. They have more understanding of the business. All those things ultimately add up to a lot of intrinsic incentivization. I would say that if I'm being heard in the team, being a developer, I feel good about it, right? And all this is
Absolutely.
like connected there. So it totally makes sense, and I think that's a very good hack to bringing new people, new teams into the same journey where you are already continuing. So great. I think with that, we have come to the end of this discussion. And in the interest of time, we'll have to pause here. Really love talking to you. Would love to know more such experiences from you, but maybe in the next episodes. So, David, once again, thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for sharing your experiences. It was great to have you here.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate the time that you've taken with me. I hope that this proves useful to at least one person and they can gain something from this. So thank you.
I'm sure it will be. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Cheers now.